In our pre-meeting, Jay came in and just dropped 10 Herald Suns on the back page. He's brought the Bailey Smith chat up now. Jay, interesting. You got the back page of the Herald Sun today. It's going to be fascinating, this standoff with the Cats.
I think this is one which could go down not only to the last hour, but the last minute of the trade period. It's going to be a really interesting one to watch because the Dogs want more than the Cats' first-round pick for Bailey Smith, and that's based on his 2021 form. We know he's an elite athlete, a highly marketable, even semi-power set, and his football in 2021 was scintillating. But the Cats are on the other side of the trade table here and negotiating hard as well because they say, well, we want to give pick 17 and pick 17 only, even if it does shuffle back by a couple of spots. Because if he went through to the national draft, the order and almost the natural draft order would dictate that that's where he would go, pick 17, because which of the clubs are going to take the punt on Bailey Smith? And there is an elephant in the room here. So there's his best footy. We know he's an unbelievable runner. He's a goal kicker. Again, that 2021 final series, who could forget? But it hasn't been a perfect start to his AFL career. Yes, there's been the knee injury, the ACL, but also there's been the mental health issues, which he's been quite open about. So there have been some blips on the radar, and at Geelong, he would require some resource in this space around him. So I think the Cats, if he was to fall through to the draft, the Cats would get him for nothing at pick 17, because who there on that list is going to take the punt on a bloke they wouldn't even be able to interview, right? So Paul Connors, who manages him, you wouldn't even be able to get a seat at the table with Bailey Smith. They'd say he's going to the Cats, don't interfere. And someone with Bailey Smith's sort of history, you know, the Cats have been working on this for 18 months. So he would go to the Cats in the draft order. And in this whole discussion, it is clear to me that Geelong hold the upper hand. And so that is why the Western Bulldogs, in all this sort of toing and froing, might just have to cop that one pick. Maybe a late sweetener, but I can't see the Cats sort of giving a lot more. Do you see anyone else taking him in the draft order, Joey? Like, who's going to take the punt?
If I was St Kilda, I'd be taking the punt. If you're going into this draft period and you don't want to upset a manager because you're going to have future dealings with players and it's going to affect your relationship, we're in it for the wrong reasons. They've lost Seb Ross. They've got Crouch, whose injury hasn't played a lot of games. They're after McRae. Bailey Smith's sitting there on a platter and you can take him. Yes, he might not want to go there, but we're playing a game where you want to win premierships.
That is an enormous risk.
Well, it's an enormous risk.
They want to take someone and pair with Matthias Philippou in that midfield that they can play for the next 14 years. Not Bailey Smith, who could be one and done. He rocks up to Linden Street for 1 year and could walk out on the club.
Well, sometimes this game's ruthless. It's ruthless. And if you don't want to come and play for our football club, Ross Lyon's out there saying, we're building and we're going to build to a premiership. They've won one in 150 years. So if they're going to balk at that because the Cats want him and everyone's going to sit back and allow the Cats to have him later in the draft, then I think that's ridiculous.
I don't think that's fair for Geelong to do that to Bailey Smith, to let him sit there and potentially go into the national draft. They've committed to Bailey Smith. They've said for a long way out, we want you, you're our man. It's incumbent on Geelong to get the deal done. They can't do that and say, well, we're going to win this Mexican standoff and put Bailey Smith through, you know, a very, very nervous period till the end of November, sitting there thinking that another club could take him if they wanted. So I think it's on Geelong and Andrew Mackie to get the deal done.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's fair when you're haggling over late picks anyway. Your pick 60s and 70s don't mean that much. They're going to throw in a third round of future, maybe, whatever. I think that's fine to get him over the line. But we do know Andrew Mackie does take his time on this. Last year, he took a long time on the Asava Radicalea trade. Everyone was questioning, why do you want the late picks? Why do you want these picks in the 60s? Well, they picked up Lawson Humphries with that pick, and he's an absolute star by the looks of it. So that's why they take their time.
Well, there's another exit at the Doggies, possibly, Caleb Daniel Jay. It's an interesting decision for him. He was in and out, wasn't in the starting 22 a lot of the time. So if you were Caleb, would you look at the trade, possibly?
So he's got a lucrative offer from North Melbourne at the table and a long-term deal to really be part of that regeneration under Alistair Clarkson. We know at the Western Bulldogs, used as sub, dropped to the VFL, played some of his best footy in the last two games, was outstanding in the last two matches. Now, as we go to air tonight, Caleb Daniel was still weighing up this option and the option to join North Melbourne. That says to me that he's genuinely interested. He went home to South Australia over the weekend to think about it, could have come back back on Monday, told his manager, Marty Pask, shut it down. No, we sit here 24 hours later and we're still talking about it. So Caleb Daniel clearly weighing up that opportunity. Again, it is a lengthy deal. He's got 2 more years to run at the Western Bulldogs, and his spot probably isn't guaranteed there. So, mate, you know, his ball use for North Melbourne and their ball movement is really important to give him some bounce off half-back. Pick 25 could be the one that North Melbourne could be prepared to give. So at this stage, the Western Bulldogs don't have a first-round pick. They could get 17 for Smith. They could potentially get a pick 25 for Caleb Daniel. And if Jack McRae, if they can negotiate a deal with St Kilda, also, pick 47 as well. So they would go, the Bulldogs, from not having a first-round pick to having some decent options, Joey. And you know this draft crop better than any of us. There's some good options and some depth to this draft.
There is, but I don't know, Josh, if you want to lose all 3 of those quality midfielders. We saw with Melbourne when they lost James Jordan, James Harms, you all of a sudden get pretty thin with your depth pretty quickly. So if McRae goes, we expect Bailey Smith to go. Maybe the Western Bulldogs do want to keep Caleb Daniel.
Yeah, as you can see there, we were totally talking a couple of years ago about this being one of the deepest midfields of all time when they made that run to the grand final. You're starting to chip away at it. Obviously, McRae and Daniel might not be the players they were back then, but you start losing your depth there. Riley Garcia is still weighing up his options, has a 3-year contract offer in front of him, hasn't signed that. Jack McRae wants out, we know. They wanted James Peatling, they wanted Xavier O'Halloran. It seems neither of those guys are coming to the Bulldogs. So suddenly, if you lose 4 midfielders, you've lost your depth almost completely. We do know they have Riley Sanders, James Harms is still there, Caleb Poulter didn't play a lot of footy this year, but it's suddenly become a midfield that was one of the best ever into sort of an almost also run around Bontempelli and Treloar and Liberatore.